Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Lisa Sassone. I work at the Housing Council at Pathstone, and I am a senior foreclosure prevention counselor. Senior refers to the years I've been here, not my age. And I will be the moderator for this panel. And Giselle Fonseca is my tech help, and she will be checking the chat for questions. So any questions you have, please put them in the chat. So thanks again, everybody, for coming and your interest in this topic today. The Housing Council will be celebrating our 50-year anniversary. And so we're having a series of panels to celebrate that. And we're also doing a anniversary celebration on October 6th. And at the end of this panel discussion, I'll put some information up so that you can join us in our celebration. The Housing Council's mission is to increase success for low to moderate income individuals and families in Monroe County and the surrounding counties to navigate the steps to successful tenancy and home ownership. So the Housing Council serves over 8,000 households annually. We provide housing counseling and intervention services for tenants, homeowners, and future homeowners. We offer comprehensive assistance and training to landlords. We maintain a housing hotline, which is every day 9 to 1. So anyone can call and ask any questions about housing. And there's always someone available. We promote housing, fair housing awareness. And we have a rental registry where landlords can list available apartments they have. So again, thanks for your interest in today's topic, which is overcoming barriers to accessing housing for non-English speakers. And before we start, I am going to introduce my expert panelists. I'm very thankful that they're here, and I'll introduce them. They'll take a minute to introduce themselves a little bit more. So first I have Marlene Cortez. She is the Senior Manager of the Language Access Program at the Empire Justice Center. Thanks, Marlene, for being here.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. As Lisa introduced, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to speak on this subject matter. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Monroe County Language Access Coalition. It is a coalition composed of about 20 plus advocates in the community that work with language, limited English proficient community and the deaf and hard of hearing community. We're a pretty unique coalition as we're one of the only language access coalition within New York State that includes the deaf community and acknowledges and recognizes ASL as a language. And I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much for being here. And I also have here Rosa Martinez. She is the Director of Property Management and Compliance at the Ibero-American Development Corporation. Rosa, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Anything you want to explain about what you do in your role?
So I'm fairly new to this role, but pretty much is overseeing all of the property management and compliance with new residents coming on board. We have worked with services like OPWDD and PCHO, all those human service agencies that help place folks that are in need of housing. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is to provide affordable housing for those folks who are not represented very much in terms of language and any other barriers that they may have, income or asset. And we're here to help guide those services to those folks. So I'm really happy to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but not least, I have Rosalie Remarais. Community Development Loan Officer at Five Star Bank. Thanks, Rosalie, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Good morning to everyone. Yes, I am a mortgage loan officer, community development loan officer at Five Star Bank. I have been in the banking business about close to 30 years, and in the mortgage business about 25. It is my passion. It is all I know how to do nowadays. I enjoy helping first-time home buyers. I do education, counseling, and of course the mortgages. You know, working at Five Star has been a great experience because they allow me to do quite a bit of community outreach. And this is one of the examples of being here today. So I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So let's start our discussion. So just a question in general for all the panelists. And I'm sure you see a lot of, you can answer with a lot of different examples, but so I'll start with Rosa. What are some specific challenges that the non-English speakers may face as homeowners and tenants?
Well, in my line of work, the biggest language barrier is that, you know, not knowing how to maneuver the system. It is a very convoluted system that needs, every step needs to happen or else it's not going to qualify. So what we do here at Ibero is that we take an application and we walk them right through the whole process. So there's no type of error. We just want to make sure that their income and their assets, in our system, are correct. That way they qualify for affordable housing, because if they don't, then, you know, we can't house them. And, you know, we don't say, you know, you are guaranteed a home. We will just say, we will walk you through the process in order to qualify you for a unit. There are people that do qualify. There are people that don't qualify. And those that don't qualify, we have enough resources in the community where we'll reach out and say, you know, they didn't qualify for me, but maybe they qualified for you. So it's a very hard process if you don't know the language to it. We're guided by the HUD handbook, and so their verbiage is sometimes outdated, but at the same time, it is what it is, and there's no way changing that. But, you know, we work through it, and because we're 95%, if not more, bilingual here in this agency, we are able to help those that have no idea what's going on. I just need a unit. They don't care about anything else. So we'll walk them through the process, and it usually works out very well. So.
Okay, great. Rosalie, what do you see as a specific challenge for non-English speakers?
So on my end, it's a big issue. Of course, I do mortgages, and the mortgage language itself is intimidating to someone that speaks English. You know, I mean, I have first-time home buyers that speak only English, and they still have a hard time. So imagine someone that doesn't speak English, Spanish, or whatever it is that they speak. So the biggest thing is the documentation, you know, explaining, translating everything, making sure that when they sign that legal document, they really understand what they're getting themselves into. So I make sure that myself and my processor, we have a couple of Hispanic processors, Spanish-speaking processor in the office, that we are very detailed with these clients, so they know that they're not just signing a compliance document that they don't know what it is. So of course, the documentation, the translation, you know, nowadays we want everything to be in Spanish if we could. And I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but, you know, the most important thing is those credit reports, you know, and I'll let Marlene later talk about that one, because that's an important one for her and for myself. But documentation, the language barrier is insane when it comes to the mortgage business. Definitely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Marlene, what do you have to add to that? Uh-oh.
Yep, there you go.
There you
I piggyback what Rosa and Rosalie said. Documentation is important, even for a native English speaker. So, and that information is not provided, and very rare provided in other languages. When COVID first happened, I heard a lot of horror stories from folks in the tenant community to say, landlords were removing them from the property without due notice, saying ICE was removing them. Spanish is the largest spoken language here in Monroe County, but it's not the only language spoken. And when a person that has a language barrier, and also there's cultural issues in the background as well. And if you don't understand those cultural issues, those bring an additional layer of a barrier. A lot of them will go silent and not realize that they have rights as tenants. So we'll let the landlord remove them from a property. We've had 3 o'clock calls to say, my landlord's at my door trying to throw me out and I just had a baby. But she spoke no English. So there's a lot of barriers when it comes to those in the, so when I say LEP, just to give some clarification, is refers to the limited English proficient community. And I use that terminology because that's a terminology that is used within the law. So in order to be consistent, I use that terminology as well. But just not only LEP, but the deaf and hard of hearing. They had no idea we were on a shutdown because none of the communication that was coming out was in a format that those with language barriers could understand. And just to clarify, for those who are deaf and hard of hearing, for the deaf community, ASL is their first language. English is their second language. So they don't always fully comprehend the English text. And ASL is a language of symbols. So not every English text, English word, there's a symbol for it in ASL.
So we're lucky to have, like Rosa said, 95% of the staff at Ibero is bilingual, and Rosalie, all of you are bilingual in Spanish. What other resources are there? Because like you said, Marlene, there are people who speak other languages or the deaf and hard of hearing. So what resources are available, local level, legal wise, national partnerships? What resources do you go to? Let's say somebody comes in and doesn't speak Spanish or English. What resources do you go to? Rosalie, what do you usually do in that situation?
So, I mean, as far as resources on my end, it's, of course, having a translator. Our bank attorneys, have to have a translator at closing if they don't have, if the customer or the client doesn't have a family member that can go to closing with them. I have been to many closings with my clients because they don't have someone to translate. So I go and translate the realtor. If it's a Spanish-speaking realtor, they'll go. But we try to partner them with a Spanish-speaking attorneys. We have few of them in the community, but we have some, and I'm grateful that we do because that's the most important part of this, on my end, on the closing side, signing those legal documents and understanding them. So the resources are getting the translators from, when there's no family member or myself that can go, On the other side, if there's other languages barrier other than Spanish, which is the most common one here, again, we have to make sure that at closing there is a translator for that language. It's a mandatory thing. Yes.
Marlene, what resources do you see? I'm sure you have a lot of resources, connections, partnerships.
So there are a few resources here in Monroe County, and there's also resources national. So the CFPB, I'm on several task force, national task force, and American Reforms Task Force, AFR. There's a lot of acronyms, and I'm trying to keep the acronyms all straight, and I get them mixed up. So there's AFR and there's FHA, FA task force that I'm on, and also one of my colleagues, Lisa Sassone, is on, and we talk about language barriers at a federal level. So we advocate with staff from the CFPB to say, you need to put products in different languages. And if you go to the CFPB website under mortgages, you'll see that there's about six to seven different languages that you can get the information on. And that work comes directly from staff here in Monroe County. And Lisa, not to, Lisa forgets this part, but a couple of years ago, Lisa helped with a Spanish glossary for mortgage terminology that the CFPB uses on their website.
Mhm.
You know, because to try to, you know, interpret escrow,
Mhm.
that's not easy to put in, you know, in Spanish without
Very
explaining
difficult.
what escrow is, right? So, you know, and for locally, for other languages besides Spanish, there you work with the agency that that individual is comfortable working with. So for example, refugees helping refugees. If you have someone that speaks another language besides Spanish or ASL, you know, they're familiar with different interpreting, and they have staff that can help with some of the interpreting issues within that community. And also there's cultural issues that go along with that. There's Mary's Place as well. We do have interpreting agencies here in Rochester. Catholic Family Center is one, Ibero is one. But when you do your research for interpreting agencies, you also have to figure out if they do ASL. Not all of them that provide interpreting will do ASL, and there are CDR offers ASL interpreters. There are other agencies locally that provides ASL interpreters. So there's a wealth of resources here. And, you know, if we don't have that language and there is a shortage of interpreters, there's also Empire Justice uses Language Line, which has over 200 languages, including ASL, that folks are used. There is a cost to that. You do have to set up an account. But if you need to, you know, someone comes in front of you, you need to communicate immediately, there is such thing as Language Line. There are other methods there are other types of company like Language Line, but Language Line is the most common use. So that's why I mentioned them.
Great. Now, I think you guys might have touched on this. I did have a little blip in my internet for a second, but talking about successes that you've come to that have overcome some of these challenges. And I know that you touched, and you can talk about some of the different successes that you have found, but I know you mentioned the credit report. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Marlene?
Sure.
That was a big one.
That's a big one. I mean, that's a really big one. For years, for over 30 years, language access advocates have fought for credit reports to be in another language besides English. And we've always gotten pushback from the credit report agencies like, no, we can't do that. It's too hard. We can't, you know, there's even a New Jersey have passed law to say, you know, you have to provide credit reports in 20 different languages, and they countersued. So that's in litigation. But within the last 2 weeks, Experian announced that they will be providing credit reports in Spanish. That is big. They're the only credit reporting agency from the large ones that will provide that in Spanish. It is big because it empowers those in the community to, you know, look at their own credit report. And Rosalie can, you know, Rosie will talk about what an impact it is in the banking industry having this credit report now in Spanish. If you go to the Experian website, it will say that announcement. So that's big. And that Empire Justice staff and staff of the National Consumer Law Center have worked for years to get this in place, and we finally succeeded. We're not stopping there, of course. We did let them like, you know, we're going to continue. They're like, yeah, we know.
Well, and Rosalie, that's going to be a big help for you too. That is
an amazing success story and win for us. It's exactly what Marlene says. I've been in this business 30 years in the banking business and 25 in the mortgage, and it was my dream to have the credit report be in Spanish. It is the very first thing that I go over with my clients, you know, when I first meet with them, and they need to understand that document, that piece of paper that's in front of them, giving them the whole credit story, you know, and it's hard for them to read it in English. Again, it's difficult for an English-speaking customer to understand a credit report. Mind you, if it's in, you know, a Spanish-speaking customer or a different language customer, to read that, to understand where the lates are, what can they do to fix it? Is it correct? Is it incorrect? How do they go about it? What does the credit scores mean? All that. To have it in Spanish, it is a win-win-win, and we're hoping. Just like Marlene says, that it's not just Experian, that it's the other two agencies. And I know, Marlene, that they will follow because they don't want to be left behind and they don't want to look bad in the community out there. So I know they will. It might not be today, tomorrow, but they will follow. And that is huge for us, huge.
Great job. That's exciting.
Mhm.
So Rosa, besides housing, talking about this topic of barriers for non-English speakers, besides the housing, what other needs do you find that people are running into that they need because of this problem?
Well, mental health is a huge problem that we are running into. There are people that are sometimes placed in housing and they have stable housing, stability, all that, but because you throw COVID, COVID is a monkey wrench into that person's dialogue with somebody or services. You know, we are not shut down, but we are keeping, the distance barrier there. And, some folks need the day-to-day reassurance, the day-to-day interaction with people. But because of COVID, it's been really hard for them to get that. So I think that case managers are doing their very best to work around that barrier, COVID, then language, then being in, one-on-one with a person. But I think that there should be more programs out there where they get the one-on-one mental health treatment that they need. I mean, there's a huge issue in our community here near Ibero, where, we built our houses, Pueblo Nuevo 1, and there's a huge opioid problem that we are facing every single day. And as landlords, we have to make sure that not only our houses are intact, but also the safety and health of our residents that actually we placed there. So we work with OPWDD hand in hand. We work with any other agency that is able to help, Catholic Family Charities, Catholic Family Services, all of those. We work with them. But I think one of the biggest barriers, aside from affordable housing, which we need more of, is the mental health aspect of it.
There's so many issues, right? It's not just one issue. There's so many things combined and involved. Rosalie, what else do you see in your? Oh, did you freeze up?
You're freezing. I think you're freezing. Really.
I think you froze.
I'm back. Say it again.
I'm back, I think. I was saying, what other issues do you see besides the housing that people have immediate needs with? Besides,
so on my side, besides housing, in the overall is financial literacy. It's a big one. They come to me to buy a house, but they're not financially ready. So education in the financial state, it's important. We need to make sure that from a young age, our kids are taught, whether it's in junior high or in high school, the meaning of financial stability. They don't know what a checking account is, because now you have a debit card or a Cash App card or whatever it is, right? And they don't know what a checking account is. They don't know what it is, what's a check. A checkbook, how to keep track of their money. So, and I have young people wanting to buy a house, 21, 22, 23-year-old, and they don't have a checking account.
And
how are you surviving? So financial literacy.
I don't think they understand credit either.
No, of course, the credit comes with it. That's what I'm saying. If you teach them from day one how to build that credit from the beginning, it will get better and better as they grow older. It doesn't matter if you teach them, maybe co-sign on a little credit card for them when they're young, when they're 17, 18. So then they start building. And when they get to college, that small limit credit card, teach them how to use it properly, not overextend. And then as they get older, then they know how to manage. But we don't, a lot of people don't do that. And I'm going to say this, and people are probably going to get offended. A lot of our Hispanic communities are probably one that don't do that. they're old school, you know. A lot of our family members are old school, and they're like, oh, they'll be okay. They don't need to pay with credit cards. They don't need to build credit. It's all cash in this world. No, it's not, because when they get to, you know, wanting to buy that house or the car or whatever it is, or even a job, nowadays they pull credit to, you know, they verify credit. So it's so important to teach them about credit and financial stability. So that is one of the things that I see before they even come to me, that I can tell they're going to need help with.
It's amazing now that what the credit people are checking credit for renting, for jobs, like you said. I mean,
For housing.
Yep.
What's
For
that?
housing, for housing,
For housing.
yeah, we look at credit. I mean, it's not, you know, we don't look for stellar credit at all. To piggyback what Rosalie was saying, you know, I wish my parents had that opportunity to look at their credit report back in the day in like 1977 when we first got here from, you know, Chile. And I remember pulling my credit report when I was my first job. I was what, 17, 18 years old or whatever. I pulled my credit. My mom's house was on my credit report because my mom's name is Rosa and my name is Rosa. And you know, the middle initial was the only thing that differentiated between my mom and I. So again, errors on credit report hindered my ability to get a good credit rating to be able to afford a house or things like that. So yeah, so kudos to you ladies, man, for doing that, because had it been done back in the 70s when I came on board, I probably would have had a better credit rating at all, because you know, my mom had, you know, bought her house with my dad on Bloomingdale Street off of North Clinton Avenue. It's funny. I still love going in that area and be like, oh my God, how it's changed, but for the better, thank God. So I look at that and I was like, wow, I'm 18 and I have a house under, you know, my credit report. I'm like, I didn't even buy a house. I wouldn't even buy a house at the time. So no, I kudos to that. It's huge. It's huge, Bob.
Yep, it happens very, very often, especially to clients that have common names. You know, Luis Rivera. You know, I mean, you know, in the years I've been doing mortgages, I've probably done mortgages for maybe 10 Luis Rivera, period. Just it. Imagine when I pull credit for Luis Rivera, so many things show up from a different Luis Rivera. So it's so important to, if we had just taught that individual, you know, make sure that you check your credit and make sure that, I don't know, you learn how to separate, you know, your name from someone else, an initial or something. You can do all that on credit reports. So.
To learn how to dispute it. And
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's nice when you name, you know, your kid a junior after their father, but what a nightmare it is for the credit report part, right?
Yes.
Lord knows I know.
Yes. It's like, so, you know, one of the intentional things when I had my sons, I was like, I am not naming him after you. Nothing personal, honey, but you know, I don't want my kids to go through that credit report nightmare.
Right.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And you know, and when we talk about language barriers, it touches every part of someone's life.
and I know. So I know, Rosalie, you touched on, you know, understanding the mortgage documents. It's hard enough, like you said, in English, if you're English speaking, but then you add, you don't understand the language. And the other thing too, is so many things now are done online, right? And done through internet or whatever, which for a lot of us is hard. So how do you deal with that? I know you help them.
That was,
is there other resources? I mean, what do they do?
Well, remember, I was a hands-on loan officer until COVID hit. Like I saw every single one of my clients in person. They signed every document in front of me. I explained, translated every single one. As soon as COVID came, everything we were distancing each other. So I couldn't meet any of the customers. So the first 3 to 6 months when we were stranded at home, working from home, and I was still doing mortgages because that business never slowed down during COVID. It was the hardest 3 to 6 months of my life and my customer's life, trying to teach a 60-year-old woman or man that they now have to use their cell phone to sign their documents. And they were like, how? ¿Cómo lo hago? No sé, no entiendo. You know, it was so hard. And so I would try to teach them from my phone to their phone, or, you know, I would do a Zoom with them, whatever, but it's not the same on my laptop and on their phone. It transfers differently. So it was very hard for them to put in a PIN code. You know, it was a secure site, so they had to do something different. And I had many clients that were frustrated. I would have to ask them to get a grandchild, a niece and nephew to help them, even a neighbor that knew maybe a little bit more than they did about technology. All that was the hardest time. Now, and they're getting, you know, more acclimated because realtors are meeting with them and teaching them how to e-sign contracts. So they already know a little bit. So when they get to me, they already know how to e-sign documents. And it's getting a little better after 2 years, but it was very difficult for them to do this internet, this iPhone stuff, or, you know, e-sign technology was very difficult. So it was learning as you go.
Now, Marlene and Rosa, have you seen other roadblocks because of COVID and the work you're doing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much every aspect of it, because in management,
Marlene looks like yes.
you know, in management, we sit down with the applicant and we go through the process. Once they're qualified, then we have to sit with them and read the lease to them, you know, verbatim, just to make sure that they understand, we mean business when we say zero tolerance for every crime, everything that's not in your lease, things like that. So during COVID, it was a nightmare trying to get a person on online, or, you know, before Zoom, they didn't know how to. Like, I don't have the program. How do I log on? So, you know, it's kind of hard to explain to folks how to get onto Zoom when you're not there with them. And, you know, we have clients that don't have phones. We don't have laptops, that don't have a resource to put, you know, to connect them with us. So during COVID, when we had no type of interaction, we would have to do this by piecemeal. So all the lease had to go through the mail, wait for them to receive it, and then sign it and then send it back to us. So imagine the delay in trying to house them when their unit is already ready. And not only that, during COVID, there was also a moratorium of going RHA or any other place where we receive housing subsidy from. They also were like, we're not going to go and inspect your units. So if I have a Section 8 unit that they couldn't inspect, I can't put anybody in there. So guess what? You know, we have a vacancy there that really shouldn't be a vacancy. So we were trying our best to be, you know, innovative and trying to work outside the box to get these people linked to us. And the best way to go about it was having a glass barrier and slip the paper under the door, have them sign, bring it back. And, you know, and also it was in the time where we had to quarantine these papers. I don't know if anybody else did, but we were told at one of the management companies that we had to quarantine papers that we received for 3 days. So imagine 3 days on top of more time off. It was a nightmare. I was like, you know what, whatever. Just air sign it. I don't care. You know, as long as you can go in there, I'm fine.
I know COVID certainly complicated life in every way. I remember we were wiping down groceries for a while.
Yes,
right?
exactly. People I know were using bleach on apples. I'm like, are you serious? I was like, listen, I'd rather catch it than have bleach anywhere around my food. You know what? It was crazy. But you know what? Another thing, it simplified the way we did business. You know, COVID has its down, and there's more negative than positive, but I think that we derived where we are today. And some companies will let you know, we don't need a storefront. We can have people work from home and be as efficient as they were going into, the office. Unfortunately, management is hands-on, so I have to be here. Yeah. But then again, I can't focus at home because I'm always looking, oh my God, I need, laundry, things like that done. So it's not like, so I like to be here at the office. But I think COVID taught us how we can do business more efficiently and different in a different way. So
Marlene, do you see any, well, I'm sure you do, complications because of COVID and what you've been doing?
Absolutely. COVID ripped the Band-Aid off of language access, of the language barriers. Language barriers are more prevalent now than ever. We've been advocating for over a year and a half, and it's exhausting, but we continue to do that, to provide these informations about COVID in other languages besides English, and translation, interpreting services at COVID, as testing sites and the vaccine sites. That was the big to do, because those in these communities, there's a trust that you have to build. And if there's no trust built, they're not going to come forward. And many of these communities are, BIPOC and people of color. And, and if we looked at the the reports on COVID, those are the highest with underlying issues to get COVID. So getting education into these communities was difficult. Trying to communicate with the communities was difficult because none of the information that was being provided was in another format. It was just English. So it was a lot of advocacy, excuse me. I'm part of the Latino Roundtable. We met every Monday to discuss these issues that were happening within our community. We advocated for a language access coordinator within the county level. In January, a bill was introduced in the Monroe County Legislature to put a language access coordinator, compliance coordinator within the county. And February 9th, that was unanimously passed. So now the county has a language access compliance coordinator to make sure that any communication coming out of the county is in other formats that folks in the LAP community and the deaf and hard of hearing community can comprehend and understand.
Do you think that was something positive that came about because of COVID when you saw
Absolutely.
how desperately, yeah?
Absolutely. The Monroe County Language Access Coalition, we grassrooted for this position. If you can go, and actually it's on YouTube, it's a January 26th Monroe County Legislature meeting that discusses the language access bill. You can hear how many people from the community called in support of this bill. And then February 9th, the bill passed unanimously.
Wow.
When we talk about language barriers, I always work together. I would say we're stronger together than separate when it comes to language access between the LAP and the deaf community. Yes, it falls under different set of laws and compliance, but the struggle of interpretation and translation is exactly the same for both communities. So work together, and we did. That's a language access compliance coordinator. That's a success story of the coalition, making sure that this was put into place to make sure there's communication coming out of.
Beautiful. Okay, the last topic I want to bring up, and I think that this is going to be an interesting one, is currently now, what impact do you see in the community do you foresee with the influx of the immigrants and the refugees? And I know we touched on this the other day when we were talking, and I don't know if you think this is going to help people break down barriers because it's going to be so necessary, or is it just going to increase the problem? And this is a very current issue. Obviously, it's always been, but right now there's a lot of things with the Haitians and the Afghanistans and all the current issues and situations. So how do you think this is going to impact the whole problem with the non-English speaking people and the barriers they're facing? Anyone can start. Rosalie, what do you think?
I think it's just going to probably make life a little bit more difficult for Marlene. She's going to have to probably try and get more resources. On my end, again, it's education and trying to find a way to communicate with them. You know, it doesn't matter where they come from, you know, what language they speak. If they do their part and they're ready to buy a house on my end, as long as I can provide the right translators, they can certainly get the same service they're getting. I want to make sure that it doesn't matter what they speak, they understand. It's not about just handing them a mortgage and a key to a new house or whatever. I mean, we need to make sure these people know what they're getting into. This is a 30-year debt. And they think it's just, you know, as easy as renting and moving on to the next one. It's not. So it's all about the education part when it comes to, you know, having different immigrants coming into our community, which we will welcome. But again, we want to help them from day one with the education part.
Marlene, what do you think about this topic?
Well, yes, it will make my work a lot, I'll be a lot busier than what I am now, and I am busy. But, you know, one of my firm beliefs is you can't say you're working with, or you work with diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility and not include language access. Language barrier is a tool of racism. And you can't say you're doing this work and not address the language barrier issue, because it's connected, it's directly connected to this work. So with all these influx coming in, I see it as you should be prepared. Language barriers, you can't say, you know, we've been into COVID for 1.5 years. You should already be prepared in adjusting your organizational budget to include interpreting and translation services. To say that you don't have the budget to do that, this far into the game, and this is my personal opinion, it's a lame excuse. It's a cover up for not wanting to provide that. What else? What is behind that? Because that should have been part of your operating process anyway. If you're servicing a community and you don't have interpretation translation budget, then you're not really servicing the full community. You're only servicing those that can speak English and that can hear English. You're not servicing everybody. So you're contributing to the racism in the community when it comes to language barriers. And also, when you have meetings and you're trying to, you know, provide services, who's missing from your table? If there are people from specific communities missing from that table, invite them. Don't speak for them. Don't make decisions for them. I am an ally for the deaf community. I don't speak on behalf of the deaf community because that's not my personal experience. But I advocate for them to be at the table, to give their personal experience, to give their input. Don't assume that you know what a community needs without having that voice at the table.
Yes.
Yeah, good point. Rosa, did you want to add something?
I did. So what we do in property management here is that we have, translators, Spanish translator, that's me. Anybody else here can translate in Spanish. However, we are guided by what, as far as a marketing plan goes for our properties, we are guided to who is least likely to apply. And in that zip code that we are building, it actually came up as Asian. And so we are able to translate all of our applications, our marketing materials, all of those things in those languages that we want to do outreach for. So, and also in our properties, we are basically, we have ADA units that are for the visually impaired. And again, I say this language via the HUD handbook that we abide by. So again, I apologize if that terminology is outdated, but that is what we have to go by, what they say. To call it that. So we have visually and hearing impaired units that are available to those applicants that need that type of service. And we do that, and they do have a preference for those units. So we are very well versed in translating materials and outreaching to those that are least likely to apply. And for example, in Pueblo Nuevo, in the 14621 area code, Asians are the least likely to apply. But we are, we are working with that agency that can help translate and get folks connected to our units that way. So yeah.
You guys are all such a great resource for us. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left. You guys, when we wrap up, well, are there any questions, Giselle, in the chat?
No questions at the moment.
Okay, so does anybody, do you have any closing statements before we wrap up in about 4 minutes? Anything you'd like to add or that we didn't bring up or anything, Marlene?
You know, I always got something to add.
I know, that's fine with you.
I mean, as we close out, we had a lot of a great conversation here today. I want folks to go back to their office and think about, how does your agency address language barriers? Does your agency have a language access plan? Does a frontline person in your agency know what to do if someone walks in through that door, or through the phone, or through Zoom, virtually or in person? Do they know how to provide interpretation services adequately without making them feel like they're excluded? And not only for the LEP community, but also for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And to make a differentiation here, the deaf community is the community that understands ASL. The hard of hearing community doesn't always understand ASL. Usually those are folks that have a hearing device and they depend on captioning. So you have to address both markets, all three markets, right? And, think outside the box. Think of how your agency, not everybody can understand their native language. So how do you address those people? You can use a video, you can use audio to give the information that you have. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You can do it right up, we have all this technology. Zoom is great. And if you have staff that's trained to do that, go right ahead. But I really hoping to encourage folks to go back and check if your agency has a language access plan. And if they don't, start putting one together.
Okay, great. Yep. All right. Ladies, Rosalie, anything you'd like to add before we start wrapping up?
On my end, again, thank you for inviting me. And I just wanted to say that at 5 Star, we do our very, very best to accommodate everyone. And as Marlene says, I'm sure we have a plan, and I will certainly go back to our compliance records and make sure that that is in place. I'm pretty sure it is. But I want to make sure that I'm more familiar with it, now more than ever. I also want to just say that I don't just do mortgages. I educate, I credit counsel when I can, when I need to. If there's a need for anything out there, I'm always happy to do presentations at places of employment via Zoom. I know I participate a lot in the Ibero classes and the ones for the Housing Council, NeighborWorks. So anything out there that requires some, some education in the mortgage field, I'm happy to do so. I'm always available for anyone in the community that needs me.
Beautiful. And I noticed, Rosa, that you put in your contact info, and Marlene and Rosalie, if you would put in the chat your contact info so everyone knows how to reach you and has access to you. And Rosa, do you have anything else you want to add before we start wrapping up?
Yes, please encourage those who are going through the process not to give up. Do not give up at any time. There are other resources. This door may not have opened for you, but there's another one waiting to open. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, as you say in property management. There's more than one way to get you a housing, whether it be renting or whether it be buying. There's always resources out there, and just continue to talk to the right people. Try to get connected with, the Rosalies of the world, the Marlenes of the world. There's always something. There's always someone that has that answer you're looking for. just don't give up, because when you do give up, you will never get to where you want to be and where you want to go. You know, so don't give up.
Thank
Keep going.
you. All right, Giselle, did I see a comment pop up or a question?
We have a question. How
Okay.
can we advocate for LEP and ASL representation with rural communities?
Who would like to take that?
I can take it.
All right.
Look into the rural communities and figure out what organization works with rural members. So there's a lot of immigrants and migrant workers in the rural community, but you just can't go out there and says, hey, I'm here to help you, because they don't know who you are. You have to build that trust. So work with agencies that work with that very specific community to build that bridge, to close that gap. With the ASL community, or the deaf community, I'm sorry, you know, a lot of people say, oh, TTY is obsolete. No, a lot of those in the rural areas depend on the TTY, because access to internet is not as you know, available as it is to us. So learn and work with agencies within those communities that can help you bridge that gap.
Good, thanks. Any other questions or comments, Giselle?
I see there's one from, there's a question there or a comment. Might be worth mentioning that agencies and business have an obligation under the ADA to provide an interpreter on request to deaf customers. Yes, they do. That's when I said there's different set of laws for the deaf and hard of hearing versus the LEP. Absolutely, there is a legal obligation. Your agency should be very familiar with what that is. There's also a website for the LEP, for the limited English proficient, called lep.gov. I say that's the holy grail of language access and what your obligations are, how to put a language access plan, what laws apply to you, what doesn't apply to you. And the same thing with the ADA, make yourself familiar with those obligations that you have to meet as a provider.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Judy Rakovich, for translating for us into ASL. And so we're going to close in a minute. I wanted to thank everybody, first of all, and I want to share, this is a series of panel discussions, and they are all recorded, and they're on our YouTube page, and there's more information about our 50th anniversary celebration on October 6th on our Facebook page and our website. And I'm going to put up, we're going to put up some information here. So please, we'd love you to join us to purchase the tickets and join us with this big celebration of 50 years. Wow.
Nice.
All right, so there's that information. We're actually ending a couple minutes early. Anything else anybody wants to say? And I thank you guys so much. You're such a wealth of information, and I just appreciate it. I've worked with all of you before, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're about 5 minutes early. We can go ahead and close up, and well, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. And everybody, please do check out the other panels that we have recorded and are on our YouTube. And you can find more information about our 50th anniversary, again, like I said, on our website and on our Facebook page. All right.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.